On this episode of Lattes and Art, presented by J Squared Atelier, we're delving into the multifaceted world of Amy L. Bernstein, award-winning novelist, journalist, playwright, and certified nonfiction book coach. Amy's diverse literary journey spans genres and forms, from dystopian narratives to insightful guides for creatives. Today, we explore her latest book, Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, and discuss her passion for helping writers and all creatives overcome self-doubt to achieve their goals. So now's the time to get your latte ready, sit back, and enjoy the show. On today's episode, we have Amy Bernstein, who's joining us, who has a book that's coming out later this month. And we are going to get an opportunity to kind of delve into the creative process with her and battling doubt. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. I'm really glad to be here.
Could you just introduce yourself a little bit for the audience so they know who they're listening to?
Absolutely. I'm a little bit of a literary Jill of all trades. I'm a certified book coach, helping a lot of other authors find their best path to publishing. It's very rewarding work. I'm also a former journalist and an executive speechwriter, and I worked many years in communications. And so for me, it's always been about the written word or the spoken word, because beyond that, I'm also a playwright, a published novelist. I write an awful lot on Substack. I've had some poetry published. And, now we've got Wrangling the Doubt Monster coming along. So I do a little bit of everything except perhaps write for television and film.
Is that on the horizon, maybe?
I don't see it, but you know what they say, never say never.
Never say never. That is so right. I'm excited to kind of jump into this because your writing has been all over. You mentioned the different styles that you have done. And what is it about genre and writing that creates struggles for authors?
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. What is it about genre? Not just what are the struggles, but genre. I do think that's a fascinating question. And I've talked about genre with so many different writers. And what I've observed is that, in a way, the genre picks the author. And what I mean by that is that people who want to write find themselves gravitating toward a certain kind of book over and over and over. And even if they try and somehow wean themselves off it and switch, like, I'm reading nothing but romance. I really need to go read crime fiction now. And then they go off and do that. And they say, you know what, though? I am at heart. Romance is what speaks to me. It's what I want to read. It's what I want to write. It's how I think. And so I think that when there's a great compatibility between the author and sort of how she feels about life and about herself and the metaphorical language that she uses to describe the world, it really helps align with the genre that's right for you. So where doubt comes in is really going to cut across the board, right? Because as creators, we're going to start doubting almost no matter what creative enterprise we're embarking on. And I think it certainly can wax and wane depending on how allied you are to your genre. If you've chosen a genre you're not really compatible with, I think a lot of doubts are going to come roaring forward.
Well, and I think it's interesting because, lattes and art, what is art? And writing is a piece of that. And I think oftentimes people don't see that. And what you're talking about here, having these sort of different genres and finding the right one, really is not unlike a painter or a sculptor that's sort of looking for what's working for them.
Oh, absolutely. When you see what painters go through in one career, they start out with abstract work and end up as realist portraitists. And so, it really is so ingrained in the journey you're taking in your life and how you see the world and how you want to interpret the world and how you feel called to communicate. And we are entitled to change our minds. I've written a mystery thriller, but I've also written a paranormal romance, and they both were so much fun. And I kind of refuse to stick to the knitting. And I think other artists sometimes feel that way too.
I like that you said it was so much fun. Does that help get rid of the doubt?
Well, nothing gets rid of doubt. Okay. Doubt, self-doubt is with us. It's part of the human condition. We have been questioning ourselves from the time that human beings began to have internal thought. And that is not going away. And we shouldn't pretend that it can or that it will. But I will tell you, James, that the more I talk about this and write about it and think about it, the more convinced I am that we can walk with our doubts, which is to say we have to acknowledge that we have them. We have to admit that we are vulnerable in this way, that we don't think that we necessarily are cut out to do something. We may not be talented enough. We may not be good enough. These are the thoughts that we hear in our own head over and over. But at the end of the day, those thoughts don't need to act like a kind of a traffic cop. They do not have to stop us. So we can coexist with these doubts relatively peacefully if we work at that over time. And I've seen this work for a lot of creative people. And I think it's the way we need to go. We've got to walk with doubt, not deny its power, but not let it block us. There's a term
that's out there. Funny, you're talking through this, and it brought to my mind a lot of conversation is happening about imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, is that something that if we're struggling with that, is it because there's self-doubt that's kind of defeating us, maybe?
Imposter syndrome is a term that's certainly been around for a long time. It's really useful shorthand for that feeling we have when we feel unworthy. We're called to do something by some force in the outside world, and we feel unworthy. Why were we called? This other person is better than I am. Why do they think I can do this? And that is all an aspect of the self-doubt that swirls within us. I've kind of created my own theory about imposter syndrome, which is a little bit different from this broader notion about self-doubt. I think that imposter syndrome arises it's most present and most worrying when we have, in fact, had some success and had some achievements, and those achievements and successes have been noticed by others. And suddenly you are out there, you're exposed, your name is out there, your work is out there, people are judging you, people reviewing you, critiquing you, evaluating you, and you're being seen. And being seen can be wonderful and it can be terrifying. And I think imposter syndrome really kicks in when you're in that stage of being seen and even lauded, and then you feel disconnected from who you really are because you're this self-doubting person who worked really hard to get these achievements, and people see the icing on the cake and they don't see all the work that went into making the cake. So there's all this kind of weird disconnection with identity that I think arises. And so for me, imposter syndrome correlates to sort of certain moments in time or in one's career or trajectory, whereas self-doubt is persistent all the time in different ways, whether you feel seen or not seen.
Before we jump into your book, I want to ask a question. You're all about taking creative risks. And from what I found when I was doing a little research on you, it's like the core of your focus. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I do believe that creative people, whether they're being creative all along, all their lives, or whether they're pivoting to a more creative career, which many people do, we have to be prepared to renegotiate and redefine our relationship to risk, what it looks like, what it feels like, and how we handle it. Because you cannot be creative and you cannot go out there and sort of do creative things without taking risks that are internal to you in terms of pushing yourself in an art form, and risks that are external in terms of, this may mean that maybe you're cutting back on paid work to do more creative work. Maybe you're having your first exhibit in a gallery, or we're self-publishing your first book. As we said a moment ago, you're going to be seen. You are taking big risks. You're risking yourself, your very self-concept, right? You're laying that open for people to see. And if we're going to do this work with the joy and passion that we deserve to do it with, we have to learn to accept new boundaries about what risk is, what it does for us, because it opens us up to new possibilities and ways in which we still need to protect ourselves from, the downsides of risk, such as criticism, bad reviews. So when you're going to get very creative, if you haven't been up to now, one of the things you do need to do is navigate and renegotiate your relationship to risk and be prepared to take more of it.
It's interesting because I am someone that I started out creative and then I moved out of that and went into a world that was very structured and I was in the finance field. Because of rules, because of these sorts of things, that creativity starts to kind of shrink. Mm-hmm. And so now here I am later in life and I've swung the other way. And it's interesting how you talked through that because it's part of what I felt. It's like, am I fooling myself? Mm-hmm. Am I doing what I should be doing? Am I where I should be? And do I need to make space for this? And I think it is true that we need to make space for ourselves to be creative. If we don't have that, it's like, where's it going to come from?
Yes to everything that you just said. And I will simply add that we're not conscious enough and intentional enough about thinking these things through. I think it's in our interest to do so, which is why I like to talk about it. I mean, I like to say I am on a mission to sort of destigmatize doubt and normalize doubt for all these reasons that we're talking about and that you said.
I know that this is an audio show, but I get the privilege of getting to see your bookcase behind you. And can you talk a little bit about the Potrero complex? Because I'm intrigued. Again, when I was researching, I'm like, this is looking up my alley.
Yeah. So I will say for benefit of folks who it's non-visual, I have a image of my actual real bookcase behind me, and my mystery thriller is one of the books that's facing out. It was a complete accident that book is facing out from the shelf. I don't know how that happened. I'll have to speak to someone.
Gasp.
They wrote during the pandemic. I just got this idea during the pandemic. As so many people got so many ideas during the pandemic, and I wanted to write about what would happen if an even worse kind of pandemic or massive sort of like mass disease process swept through our population, and what kind of a lasting mark would that make on culture? How would it shift our behavior? How would it shift our relationship to governance and our tolerance for risk as a society? And I began to ask all these what if questions, which is what I love to do. And I gave birth to a mystery thriller that looks at some pretty devastating, serious, and kind of horrifying things that come out of changes in the balance between people and power in the wake of a really, really, really terrible pandemic. And I don't want to give away too much, but it is a mystery about a missing girl, a missing teenager in a small town, actually more than one, but it's all tied to some fairly nefarious forces that are at work.
This came about because of pandemic, right? We're all locked in the post-apocalyptic feel that we were going through. Mm-hmm. How much does what circles in your world, whether it's what you're feeling yourself or what you're experiencing or going through, make it to your books?
You know, I think every author has a completely different answer for that question, except that I think the commonality is more often than not, you'll hear us issue some version of, I don't know. Which is to say, it's so hard to know. These ideas come and go. And what I do is I wait for the ones that are sticky. If I start thinking about something and I don't remember it the next day, well, that's that. If I start thinking about something and it starts to sort of settle in and I start to have more thoughts about it and I start to ask questions and I start to imagine characters and scenes, it's like, then I know I might have something that I can really work with. I tend to get lots of ideas from the news, from culture, and from posing a lot of what if questions about where we are now in our reality and where things might end up. I absolutely love the speculative mode because I think it's so much fun to kind of go, well, but what if? And so that's where a lot of my fiction comes from ultimately.
When I was on your website and I was going through, I have to tell you, I was so caught up with your tagline, telling stories that let you feel and make you think. Where did that come from?
Actually, I can sort of answer that one. It's not like I don't know. I was in a marketing or author branding workshop. This is easily 3 years ago, three and a half years ago. And whoever was giving the workshop at that time said something about the power of an author branding herself with something like a tagline. And the minute she said that, I literally went off to a blank screen while this workshop's going on and like scribbled something something very close to what it is. Oh, this is what I do. Oh, this is it. I'm really pleased that, my writing has changed a lot. Even my writing goals have changed a lot in the last 3-4 years. The tagline is still true really to probably everything that I do. So I think I captured something about myself that was true. And I'm glad that in that moment that I was able to do that. And I do recommend that authors do this. You may not like the word branding in general. It might feel icky to you, but at the end of the day, you want to communicate something essential about who you are as a writer and what your concerns are. And it's a good way to do it.
Well, and I think with all artists, we have a branding, whether we recognize that or not. My art, it's kitschy, it's campy. It is what it is. And I get labeled that. And as long as I can embrace these sort of taglines that are who I am as an artist, I think it helps guide us deeper into discovering who you are as an author. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I loved the moment. That was like the first visual that I got. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm in for. And I appreciated that. Now, you've got a book that's coming out on January 28th. Tell me about this. How did this come about?
Sure. This book is called Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration. This is a book of inspiration and encouragement for every self-doubting creative who is out there in the world, in working in any medium. I wrote it as a way to talk through my own self-doubts as a person who wouldn't even call herself a writer until well into midlife, even though it's all I've ever done. And I also wrote it because I'm working with so many writers now, really in countries around the world, who are struggling with these core questions about, can I do this? Who said I could write a book? Can I write a book? Do I need permission? Am I good enough? Will I ever sell it? I mean, all of this is in there. And how hard it is. It's like, I can't finish this. I'm stuck. I don't have what it takes. All these things. And that's true across artistic media, right? And so I wanted to write a book that would open a conversation, allowing us to be more vulnerable and acknowledge that we all walk with self-doubt and that many times our doubts stop us in our tracks. And my thesis, which I said kind of earlier, is it can and it does, but it need not. It's really all about some mindset protocols, really, and how we sort of choose to think about these things. So the book is pure encouragement and inspiration. It's illustrated with these lovely, lighthearted, sort of warm pictures that help artists feel sort of seen and encouraged to walk with their doubts. It's not like a how-to. It's not a workbook. It's not really a guidebook. What I've started to say is that it's a tool to help you recognize your own vulnerability as a doubting person, realize you are not alone, that you are in community with these thoughts, and that you can go forward and make your art despite your doubts. That's where it really works as a tool. And I'm pleased to say that many people who have read the book before it comes out are saying that that's helping them. And we're trying to use the term doubt monster casually in conversation now. Oh, my doubt monsters have come out.
Well, and it's interesting that this idea that our doubt, calling it a doubt monster, right, that creeps in. Mm-hmm. There's some humor to this, but there's some humanizing to it. It allows us to giggle a little bit at our own selves and some of the roadblocks we may put in place that keep us from finding that idea, that creation, that success.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought up two aspects of that on the one hand, we do need to not take ourselves quite so seriously all the time. That is so important because that gives us cathartic distance on our own circumstances, on our own human condition, on our identities as creative people. So that's important. And on the other hand, there are moments that are yes, very serious, where I think people can read some passages and go, wow, that's me. You got me. How powerful is it to put words to feelings that we don't always want to articulate, even acknowledge, discuss? And I'm putting words to those feelings in a really big way. I've really doubled down on that. And that's why I'm saying I'm trying to normalize conversations around this topic.
That key word, normalize. Mm-hmm. There are words in our society that we're all nervous about talking about. or admitting to. And the more that we can normalize this sort of thing, that we all feel doubt in ourselves at some time, that we won't be successful with this idea, that we won't become the big famous individual that we had dreamed of as a child, the more this conversation can occur, the more normal it becomes. And I think that's great that your book gives this opportunity to be able to get there. I'm actually excited. I am looking forward to reading it myself. And I've already know one person that I need to get a copy for them to read, because they are actually writing right now and kind of figuring out how to go through that process. And so I kind of want to jump for a second over to, as a writer, how do you find what's right for you in publishing, in self-publishing, and how, like, you're marketing yourself right now and how you're getting this book out? What are you doing that you could tell other writers so that they may be able to see that same sort of success?
Yeah, let me answer that a little bit sideways. Rather than just tell you, quote unquote, what I'm doing, I think it's very important. And again, I've had so many conversations with so many writers in different stages about this very thing. It's really important for every writer to find the tools and the outlets that he, she, or they are most comfortable with as their authentic selves. There's no point in trying to do something that you feel profoundly uncomfortable and unsure about, because you won't be your best self in that medium. So let's take a really obvious example. You don't want to go on TikTok. You don't want to make little videos of yourself. You are just not that person. You're not comfortable. You don't particularly want to get comfortable. It's not your way. Your way is to write a Substack post with a nice picture where you can take time, put your thoughts together and put it together as a little essay and find the perfect illustration and share it that way. That is terrific. It's important to really find the channels where you express your best self and forget about the rest. Because this notion that you somehow have to be everywhere all at once, like the movie, everything everywhere all at once, or whatever it was called, or that you have to be all things to all people, and that if you're not doing that, well, you have just failed to fully market yourself and realize your marketing potential. No, I call BS big time on that. You know, we really, these channels, and I'm referring to everything you would put under the social media umbrella, for example, that includes podcasts, even just it's social and it's media, right? These channels have matured enough. We know what they are. We know who they're serving. We have to be honest about who they're not serving, and we have to gravitate to the ones that play to our strengths. And there are people, and I envy them. I'm not a very photogenic person. I never have been. It doesn't worry me. It's just a reality. But there are people who can go on, do an Instagram reel or TikTok reel, and they're gorgeous and they letter perfect. And you think that they rehearsed their script, and I don't think they did. They're just so good at it. And their backdrop is amazing. And I'm sitting there going, how did you put that together? Like, that's hard for me. And I did TikTok for a year, by the way. I was sharing tips for writers and resources and sharing content in a really authentic way. And it still wasn't easy. I'm more of your Substack gal, right? I love podcasts, because podcasts are conversations. And I love having conversations rather than talking to the ether. All by way of saying, when you're marketing yourself as an author, when you're marketing a book, take that pressure off yourself. You do not have to do a million things. Social media does not sell books. Engagement sells books. Finding real people to talk to about real things that connect to your work, that's what moves people. Doing book clubs, that kind of thing moves people. We don't just automatically forget the book talk thing, like if only that one book talk influencer found you, you'd be a millionaire. No, forget it. It's not real life. So I think I was on my soapbox there, but there you go.
You know what? I love a good soapbox. A friend and I wandered through the Palm Springs Art Museum yesterday, and the interesting conversation that came up was audience. And they're kind of discovering where they're going with what they're doing. And at the moment, everything is exciting and fresh and new, and trying to bring focus to this. Bringing that reminder that you need to know who the audience is. You need to find an audience. It's not just about putting it out there. And I think you saying that with social media, that's fine. And you get the likes and you get the views and the stuff. But does it really generate what you're trying to do with what it your writing, your art, your creativity. And I think finding the right way to do it, to get it out there, is more important than just having a bunch of posts here and there.
Absolutely. It really is. It really is. And as you say, it is about understanding who is your reader and how do you connect with them. And, if you can be comfortable giving a stand-up talk in a library, in a community center, not that, sure, bookstores are great, but even bookstores, you're not guaranteed to have a lot of people. It's not an answer. It is about trying to just be real and engage with real people. I mean, that's what it's going to feed your soul. It's going to feed the audience's soul. And we pretend that social media is like engagement, but most of the time it's just a one-way communication from you to a completely anonymous world. And that's not very satisfying.
I want to ask a question about being a certified nonfiction coach. Mm-hmm. What is that?
Yes, let me break that down. Book coach, unlike, say, just a traditional editor, and I'm going to generalize a bit, but it's pretty true. A book coach is someone who will work with the author in a very holistic way as an accountability partner for their work, as someone who can provide real specific tools and guidance as they try and structure a work in any genre, as someone who will be a champion for them as they're going through the process of writing, planning, drafting, and kind of be with you, be alongside you, so you're not doing all that yourself. By contrast, the traditional work of an editor, and again, the editors come in many shapes and sizes, but an editor works with text. A book coach works with the whole author on every aspect of the process. Well, or almost every aspect. Some book coaches will take you all the way through to a proposal or query letter, and some will just work with you till the draft is done, depending on what you're writing. There are book coaches who are working in fiction, nonfiction, memoir. I went through the Author Accelerator program, which is the premier book coach certification program. Now it's pretty acknowledged as such. And there are hundreds of us now, book coaches, literally around the world, who are working with authors to help them find their best path to writing, leading a work, and often getting published. And it's incredibly challenging and rewarding for the coach and the author, and these relationships are really bearing a lot of fruit so that the writer's not doing everything in isolation.
So if a writer's that's writing nonfiction and mm-hmm. is looking for a coach, are they able to connect with you through your website? How do they?
Yes, I have through my author website has a link to my book coaching website, I think, and vice versa as well. So amywrites.live, which is my author website, has a page that would take you to my book coaching. I will say that I welcome inquiries. I am not accepting any new clients right now. I'm happy to say that I have such a full stable of authors that I can't take anyone on right now, but that could change in about 6 months when my birdies fly the nest and get book deals, which I'm hoping is going to happen with a couple of them soon. But yes, and people can read up on this. And if anyone wants to learn more about book coaching, either because they may feel that this is a great thing that they want to do themselves, or they may feel that a book coach can help them, they can also visit authoraccelerator.com.
Nice. That's got to feel good that you're that busy with helping these others.
It is amazing. And the reason I'm coaching nonfiction is twofold. First of all, a lot of my career was in nonfiction as a journalist, as a government speechwriter in some really complex communications work with government and nonprofits. So I've done a tremendous amount of nonfiction work. And because I also write fiction, I always say to people, I don't want to confuse my brain. I don't want to help you write your novel if I'm trying to write my novel. So there are many coaches who coach specifically in the genre that they themselves are steeped in. In other words, there are folks writing romance books who coach romance writers, and that's marvelous. It's just not how my brain works. My clients are gloriously diverse. I mean, they're journalists, educators, scientists, and it's just wonderful to sort of help each of them on that journey to get their book done.
Genre in writing is so amazing. And I think what you're talking about when you say that you want to coach nonfiction specifically, and how you need to be able to have that space for fiction, our brains kind of get overloaded, don't they?
My brain is very overloaded right now. Can you tell? Yes. Yeah. And you didn't ask, but I will say that there are such extraordinary commonalities between writing fiction and writing nonfiction. People might think, oh, well, these are just very different things. Actually, they're not, because what ties them together is the power of storytelling. Because great nonfiction is also about telling stories, not quite the same way, but you still need to get that reader drawn into, a challenge and what's the solution and who are the heroes and who are the villains and how are you going to get me to the finish line? And of course, in fiction, it's very much the same thing. You need to have, action. You got to have people to root for. You got to get people to a conclusion that's satisfying in some way, and so that they do have a lot in common.
You're coaching these individuals, and you mentioned that you're hoping that we see publications coming later this year into next. What happens when there's rejection? How do you coach them through that? How does rejection start to feed more of that, the doubt monster?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. Let me walk back something in case I gave a wrong impression. My clients often are working with me. Many of them are working with me for more than a year because it takes so long for them to get the book to a point where they can write a really powerful book proposal, which on the nonfiction side, you need a book proposal. It's different in fiction. You have to have a complete manuscript and you're going to query an agent or a publisher with a complete manuscript. In nonfiction, you have to have a complete idea and really, really structured chapters. You have to know where the book is going and you have to know a lot of other things about how you can help market it and so forth and who the audience is. Only have to have sample chapters really written and polished that someone may read. So the paths are a bit different. And I helped one author last year nail down with her agent and get a book deal through some of the work that we did together, which was very gratifying. This year, I think of some of my clients as getting ready to graduate, which is to say we're working on a proposal now that we'll be taking into the marketplace. I have another writer who I think will be at the proposal stage within the next 3 months. And so then to get to your core question, I prepare them by telling them over and over again, look, this is a really, really, really tough business. You got to hear, which is amazing. There's just it's in my contract. There are no guarantees. I cannot guarantee that a client of mine will get an agent, a publisher, a book deal, make money, self-publishing. Nope. Can't guarantee it. And I put that in writing. But the but is that you have to remember that there's huge joy and learning and self-accomplishment that comes along with just getting far enough along to make the book, write the book, plan the book, structure the book. Writing a book proposal is not a small thing. So there's a lot to be said for doing those things. And then there are things that are out of your control. And that's life.
This is so true in any of the art. There are no guarantees. There are no proven successes that can be repeated. And I think until we kind of embrace that rejection is a part of this world, and comes that doubt monster. And is there some controlling that when we are able to process rejection better, do you think?
I think it's taken me, boy, have I lived this. I call myself a serial submitter. I've submitted a lot of stuff. I've been kind of, very aggressive about it, right? Because you know what? If you don't play, you can't win. And here's where I've come out on rejection, because I've been through the traps on this. For like many, many, many other creative people, for a long time, I took it personally in the sense that I was heartbroken because I was pretty sure I was being told that I'm just not good. My work wasn't good. Period. My work wasn't good. Even if I thought I'd made it as good as it could be, I was being told you stink. And that was very, very hard to take. And I will tell you, and I will tell everyone who's listening, I went into real depressions about this. I had real crises where I thought I was going to be really good at all this. I can't believe I'm not like smashing it. I came out of successful career type stuff and pivoted to all this writing. Why am I not killing it? Okay. So I understand rejection big time. I've been down this journey now a really long time and I finally it feels amazing. I've come out to a very different place. And here's the different place. Yeah. The writer or the artist has to realize that while you think that editor or curator, whoever it is, while you think they are rejecting you monumentally, personally, professionally, as a human being and as an artist, what they are doing is balancing 1,000 variables you don't know anything about the anthology they're putting together, about the magazine they're putting together, about the art exhibit they're putting together, about the mix of artists they need, about diversity considerations, about stylistic considerations, tone, voice. What if you wrote something that was similar to something else they already accepted? There's things. What if your work is kind of running long and they decided they just need 2 shorter pieces? You don't control any of this. And so most of the time they're being oversubscribed. There's 1,000 people applying for 12 places. Just because you don't make the cut doesn't mean you're not good or even great. It means that they had to make an equation and you're not part of that equation. It's not about you. This is so important to take on board because we've got to depersonalize this a little bit. And it took me so long to figure that out. It's so obvious to me now.
And it's funny that I love that you call it depersonalize. Mm-hmm. I teach in a college setting art, and one of the processes is critique. Mm-hmm. And I have a lecture that's called The Golden Rules of Critique. And one of them is you can't take it personal. You can learn from this experience. You can hear what the audience is telling you. Mm-hmm. But like you said, that audience is completely out of your control. Mm-hmm. It isn't anything that you can get warm fuzzies from if they're not ready to give them. It's a great thing when we can get to that point of realizing it's not personal.
And the thing that's so off kilter here is that when we make art in any form, the making of it is very personal to us. So the product that we create is personal. The minute you put it to the outside world, it's not personal in that you are now one commodity among many, 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 many other commodities in your area. And you have to see it as now something separate from you. So, when I have agents turning down my manuscripts, I didn't write a bad book. I wrote a book that they don't think they can sell to the piece of the market that they deal with. And right now in the aging world, there's a lot of considerations going on. If they don't think they can sell to a big 5 publisher and it's going to move at least 30,000 copies, a lot of them aren't interested. That's a whole other thing. You may be trying to thread a needle and you belong threading a different needle. So that's why there's all these things that take away the personal realm. And as you say, you do have to learn to be able to handle valid and valuable criticism and input and learn from it and grow from it. And that it's hard, but you'll be better as a result. But so many of these things is just not about what you made and what you did and what you thought and how good you are. It's just not.
Amy, I am so loving this conversation. It has been great.
Yes. Wonderful.
As we start wrapping up, I'll make sure that all of the links are in the show notes so that people can find you in the book and learn more about book coaches and just all of this. But if you were to leave us with how to wrangle that doubt monster, what would you leave us with?
I think a lot of this starts with giving yourself permission to be an artist. Give yourself the space to explore without outcomes, to make art without confronting judgment, suspending judgment, to experiment, to be open to failure, whatever that means or looks like to you, to take these creative risks we talked about. But it starts with you must give yourself permission to be this person. To be this person who makes things, because too many creative people I meet are withholding permission from themselves and not doing the work that they're capable of doing. And that's really where it starts. And you can walk with the doubts if you give yourself permission to answer the calling and the passion that's inside you.
I love that. Give yourself permission. Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration is dropping on January 28th. Amy L. Bernstein is the brilliant mind behind this book, not to be missed. Amy, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and your new book.
James, I loved this conversation with you, and I feel like you and I could talk for another hour.
Right? I mean, and I'm out of coffee.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of this inspiring conversation with Amy L. Bernstein. We've explored her incredible journey as a writer and her mission to help creatives overcome self-doubt with Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration. If today's discussion resonated with you, be sure to check out Amy's work and consider how her insights can help you embrace your own creative process with confidence. And don't forget, Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration releases on January 28th and will be available on Amazon. If you're a writer struggling with self-doubt or looking for motivation to push forward, this book is a must-read. You can find all the links to Amy's books, her website, and more in the show notes, so be sure to check them out. Also, be sure to subscribe to Lattes and Art and show your support by leaving a rating and comments. Until next time, I'm James William Moore, and this has been Lattes and Art, presented by J Squared Atelier.